Most people think you need to ride all the way to Chicago to get your money's worth out of an Amtrak US Rail Pass. But what if you used it for something totally different? In this episode, I'm turning one US Rail Pass into 4 separate weekends out of New Orleans. Plus one 3-day go bigger getaway, all without ever getting on a plane. We're talking Gulf Coast beaches, Cajun country, small town trails, a big city music weekend in Memphis, and a longer escape to Lake Charles for casinos and bayou time. I'm keen on the rails, and this is one hub, 4 weekends. New Orleans on the USA Rail Pass. Let's get started. Quick pass disclosure and ground rules. Before we jump into the trips, here's the ground rules for how I'm using the pass. The Amtrak USA Rail Pass gives you 10 coach segments to use in a 30-day window. A segment is one train in one direction. So New Orleans to Memphis is one segment. Memphis back to New Orleans is another. In this episode, I'm treating New Orleans as my home base, and I'm breaking the pass into 4 separate 2-night weekends, plus an optional 3-night upgrade. Each weekend uses 2 segments. Out on Friday, back on Sunday. That's 8 segments total. And then if you decide to do the Lake Charles long weekend, that's 2 more segments still within the 10-segment limit. I'm only counting the trains. Your hotels, food, and activities are separate, because those will change a ton based on your budget and travel style. And throughout the video, I'll give you a rough sense of what these trips would cost if you didn't have the pass, so you can decide whether the pass makes sense for you or if you'd rather just book one of these weekends on its own. New Orleans is actually a much better rail hub than people realize. From Union Passenger Terminal, you've got the new Gulf Coast line east along the water, into Mississippi and Alabama. The Sunset Limited heading west toward Texas, with stops like Lafayette and Lake Charles. The city of New Orleans heading north through Mississippi up to Memphis and beyond. And the Crescent heading northeast toward Hattiesburg, Birmingham, Atlanta, and all the way up the East Coast. In this video, I'm going to keep it realistic for a long weekend. So instead of trying to do one giant marathon trip, we're focusing on 4 2-night trips that fit a normal weekend. Plus one longer Lake Charles weekend if you can stretch it to 3 nights. Think of it as New Orleans and the rail-reachable South. Beaches, bayous, small towns, and one big music city all without giving up your home base or taking vacation days you don't have. Weekend 1. Gulf Coast Beach Reset. 2 nights. Let's start with the easiest win. A quick Gulf Coast Beach weekend. On weekend 1, we're hopping east on the Gulf Coast train to a Mississippi beach town like Biloxi or Gulfport. From New Orleans, the ride is short, just long enough to feel like a real trip, but not so long that you lose your whole Friday. You roll in, drop your bag at a hotel or small inn, and you've got 2 nights to walk the beach. Hit the seafood spots, maybe visit a pier or a little local museum, and just slow down. This is your I need a reset but don't want to think too hard weekend. You're not juggling rental cars. You're not connecting through a hub airport, you're stepping off a train and you're basically there. In terms of value, a round-trip ticket like this can easily chew through a decent chunk of what the rail pass costs on its own. So even if you only use the pass for 3 or 4 short trips like this, you'd be close to breaking even compared to buying each ticket separately. If you live in or near New Orleans and just want something low stress, this is probably the first weekend I'd book. Weekend 2, Cajun country in Lafayette, 2 nights. For weekend 2, we're heading west on the Sunset Limited to Lafayette. This one has a completely different vibe. Cajun food, live music, and access to swamp and bayou tours if you want to get out into the marshes. The train ride is only a few hours, so again you're not burning an entire day just to get there. You could use your first night for a classic Cajun dinner and maybe some live music. Day 2, you book a swamp tour or a bayou outing, something that gets you out on the water or up close to the wildlife. Then you've got one more evening to explore Lafayette's downtown. Grab another good meal, and catch the train back to New Orleans on Sunday. This is the weekend I'd recommend if you want something that feels uniquely South Louisiana. You're still close to home, but the culture, the food, and the pace feel very different from the French Quarter. Again, each way on the Sunset Limited is one segment on the pass. Without the pass, a round trip could easily be a sizable ticket on its own. With the pass, it becomes just one of several weekends in your 30-day window. Weekend 3. Small town trails in Hattiesburg. 2 nights. Weekend 3 heads northeast on the Crescent Line to Hattiesburg. If the first 2 weekends were about water, beaches and bayous, this one is about small-town energy, rail history and trails. Hattiesburg gives you a walkable downtown, some historic sites, and access to the Longleaf Trace, which is a rail trail that's perfect if you want to bike or just walk a piece of it. You can spend your first afternoon checking out the town, maybe grabbing a casual dinner downtown. Then dedicate your full day to getting out on the trail, visiting a local museum or zoo, and just soaking up a place you probably wouldn't have flown to on purpose. This is exactly the kind of destination the rail pass is great at unlocking. Not quite big enough to justify a flight, but perfect for a weekend by train. In the bigger picture, it rounds out your episode. Gulf Coast, Cajun country, and now a smaller inland city with a more outdoorsy twist. If you're the kind of traveler who likes discovering places friends haven't heard of, Hattiesburg is a great use of a weekend segment. Weekend 4, Big City Music in Memphis, 2 nights. For Weekend 4, we're finally doing the name-brand city on this list, Memphis. This uses the City of New Orleans route heading north, and it's a longer ride than the first 3 weekends. You leave New Orleans, ride up through Mississippi, and roll into Memphis ready for a full weekend of music, history, and riverfront time. Over 2 nights you can do Beale Street, visit the National Civil Rights Museum, and spend some time on or along the Mississippi River. If you really want to go all in, you can add Graceland or another major attraction. But even without that, you can easily fill 2 full days. This weekend is your, if you only pick one trip. If you've never been to Memphis and you already live in New Orleans, turning it into a train weekend is a pretty compelling pitch. From a money standpoint, a New Orleans-Memphis round trip can be a hefty ticket in cash, especially close in or on busy dates. On the pass, it's just 2 more segments in the same 30-day window you used for your beach, Cajun, and small-town weekends. Optional 3-day upgrade, Lake Charles, 3 nights. Now let's talk about the longer upgrade weekend. Lake Charles. This is the one trip in the episode that I think really benefits from being 3 nights instead of 2. You're back on the Sunset Limited, heading west from New Orleans. The ride to Lake Charles is long enough to feel like you're going somewhere, but still manageable for a long weekend. You're not losing an entire day just sitting in a seat. Once you're there, you've got 3 full nights to split between. Time on the lakefront. 1 big casino night if that's your thing. And a day or half day getting out into nearby bayou or swamp areas. You could structure it like this. Night 1, arrive, check in, easy dinner, maybe just explore the waterfront. Day 1 and Night 2. Focus on the casinos and nightlife. Day 2 and Night 3. Slower pace, maybe a bayou tour and a more relaxed evening. Then ride back to New Orleans on Day 4. Just like with your other hubs, this Lake Charles trip isn't on top of the 4 weekends. It replaces any one of them inside the same 30-day pass window. So if you know you'd rather go bigger once instead of taking 4 medium-sized trips, you can swap out whichever weekend feels the least you and plug Lake Charles in as your 3-night upgrade. From a value standpoint, that's still only 2 more segments on the pass out and back on the Sunset Limited, but you're getting a lot more time on the ground. So who is this New Orleans hub plan actually for? This is for you if you live in or near New Orleans and want to stretch one rail pass into a month of real-life weekends, not one giant sabbatical. You like the idea of mixing beach time, food trips, small towns, and one big city music weekend without ever having to deal with an airport. You're okay with coach, you're okay with train schedules that may not be perfect, and you actually like the ride as part of the trip. It's probably not for you if you only care about national park-style scenery and need mountains or canyons every time you look out the window. You hate the idea of splitting your travel across multiple weekends and would rather do one big linear trip. Or you're extremely schedule sensitive and can't flex around late trains or early departures. In that case, you might be happier just booking one Memphis or Gulf Coast trip with cash and skipping the pass entirely. I'm not going to quote exact fares here, because they jump around based on date and availability. But as a rough guide, if you bought 4 separate round-trip tickets from New Orleans to places like the Gulf Coast, Lafayette, or Lake Charles, Hattiesburg, and Memphis, you'd often end up in the same ballpark as the full price of a U.S. rail pass. If you catch the pass on sale, the math can tilt even more in your favor. Where the pass really shines is flexibility. You're not locked into a single route, and you can rearrange which weekend you do as long as you stay within those 10 segments in that 30-day window. You're also protected against the "I decided to add one more weekend and now this last-minute ticket is expensive" problem, because the marginal cost of that extra train trip is basically zero once you've bought the pass. The trade-off is that you're in coach, and you need to be a little more on top of reservations and blackout dates. So I'd think of the pass as a way to unlock options rather than as an automatic money saver in every situation. If you've ever looked at the Amtrak map and thought, "Yeah, but what can I actually do from New Orleans?" This is one answer. 4 two-night weekends. A quick Gulf Coast beach reset. Cajun country in Lafayette. Small town trails and history in Hattiesburg. And a big city music weekend in Memphis. Plus a 3-night Lake Charles upgrade if you want to go bigger once instead of medium 4 times. All of it built around your real life, your real weekends, and one rail pass. If there's another New Orleans area trip you think should replace one of these weekends, tell me in the comments. If you want to see how this compares to my other hub episodes from LA, Seattle, Chicago, and DC, I've got those linked in the description. I'm keen on the rails. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next train out of New Orleans.